Hello everyone, greetings from Sweden. My name is Marina Nistotskaya and I am an Associate Professor of Political Science at Department of Political Science, University of Göteborg. I'm also a researcher with the Quality of Government Institute. We at the Quality of Government Institute were very happy to receive an invitation to contribute to the inaugural issue of the KIPA Public Administration Review. I wrote an article reviewing what the concept, what is QoG, and what we have achieved as a research area, reviewing effects of QoG and also causes of QoG. And in the presentation that follows, I will share with you some of the insights from our literature. So to begin is QoG, or quality of government, is a research area within social science. We are deeply rooted in political science, but there are also researchers from economics, history, environmental sciences, and several other social science disciplines that are interested in the quality of government as we understand it and conduct research within this under the umbrella of QoG. QoG is part of the new institutional paradigm. As you all know, Douglas North, a Nobel Prize laureate in economics, powerfully argued that these are not the traditional factors of production, such as technology or the accumulation of capital, that makes one country's rich and other countries poor. It's the institutions. And he defined institutions as very broadly as rules that structure human interaction or rules of the game. And the argument that institutions matter is very vividly supported by a tale of two Koreas. You can see the satellite image of night light in South and North Korea. And you see a stark difference between the two countries right across the official border. And this is not the quality of the people that live on both sides of the border. These are not the geographical conditions. These are the quality of institutions that propel Korea, South Korea, to one of the most developed countries in the world today, leaving North Korea at the other side of the income distribution. This neo-institutionalist literature very quickly refocused on governments, because governments are the most important rule makers. And the good institutions very quickly became synonymous with good governance, where good governance was very broadly understood, starting from separation of powers, democracy, rule of law, government effectiveness, lack of corruption, and etc. And soon a big literature developed that linked good governance with good outcomes, such as economic growth, reduction of poverty, reduction in maternal mortality, child mortality, and other outcomes. But there were problems with the good governance approach. And the main problem is that good governance is an ill-defined, conflated, and ambiguous concept, which is difficult to measure and hence very difficult to conduct research. Look at this definition of good governance by World Bank. It has at least 3 elements, and all these 3 elements tap into different dimensions of governance. First one is about how governments are selected. Second is the capacity of governments to effectively formulate and implement sound policies. Third is the respect of citizens and state for the institutions that govern economic and social interactions among them. This is a very complex definition. And based on this definition, it's very difficult to really pinpoint what is good about what is good. What is good in good governance? There are too many attributes. So against this background, Bura Stein, who is the founding father of this whole QoG Institute and the Koch understanding of good political, what is good political institutions, he offered a new conceptualization, calling it the quality of government, not the governance. Governance is a very broad word, and it's used in at least three different meanings and means at least three different things. But he argued for quality of government, and arguing that high quality of government is impartiality in the exercise of power. In their groundbreaking publication, Burestein and Jan Theorel defined impartial exercise of power of high quality of government in the following way. When decided upon a case, a public official should not take into consideration anything about the applicant's circumstances, which is not stipulated in policy or law beforehand. So this approach towards good political institutions has several benefits. First, it distinguishes between access to power and exercise of power, something that I will speak in a minute. Secondly, it's unidimensional. Instead of very many attributes of what does it mean to have a good government or good governance, Rothstein and Theorel argued for one attribute, and this is impartiality. Consequently, this operationalization excludes the contents of policies and outcomes of government that could be contextual and also led to considerable problems with the pinpointing the causal link between the good government and outcomes of government. Fourth, impartiality and partiality are universally understood. And finally, this lean conceptualization of good political institution lend itself to successful operationalization and measurement. So what does it mean that the high CoG is the impartiality in the exercise of power? If you imagine a political process as divided into two parts, first part is characterized by democratic procedures, the electoral rules, party systems, and the competition between different political actors. This all goes into the system, into this blue box where political decisions are made. But these are only framework political decisions. In many cases, they need further clarifications, and whereby executives, public administration, and courts legislate bylaws or clarify existing legislation in more detail. And also government, to a large extent, means implementation of law, and the overwhelming majority of citizens come in contact with the governments through the implementation of the law. So by focusing on only one part of the political process, the output or the exercise of power, we suggest that we distinguish between different processes that are different in nature, democratic procedures, and then the exercise of power. And we can measure their relative importance for different outcomes, like economic development or poverty. CoG is universally understood. Here you see a graph of showing the responses from about 25,000 people from 18 African countries who were asked to evaluate 3 scenarios, each of which represented some kind of partial behavior of a government official. And as you can see, the overwhelming majority of the respondents found those scenarios, the behavior of public officials in those scenarios, as wrong and punishable. So there is no mystery for the majority of the people in recognizing partial and impartial governments. The world of partial governments is rich. In many developing countries, it is captured by the phrase, "It is our turn to eat." It's the popularized by Michaela Wrong in her book on corruption in Kenya. On the right side, you see these 9 individuals. They are all businessmen who have huge procurement contracts from the Russia's state. And all of these people, nine people, they're either friends or relatives of the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. Forbes annually, the journal Forbes annually conducts a rating which is called the Kings of Procurement, and the people who are very close to the very top of the political pyramid in Russia get the majority of the procurement contracts, state contracts. But the partiality of government is not limited to developed countries or non-democratic countries. We know that Spain is stifled by a systematic cronyism that pushed a lot of young and ambitious people outside the country. Very recently, the world of partiality was replenished by a new phenomenon called chumocracy. This is the same type of the same phenomena. It's a cronyism, which we observe also in the distribution of COVID contracts in present day UK. QoG, consequently, such a lean definition of QoG lends itself to measurement. We at the Quality of Government Institute conduct several efforts to measure quality of government. For example, we measure citizens' perceptions of government partiality at the level of the EU regions. This is data from the so-called EQI, European Quality Index, Quality of Government Index from 2017. The blue shades represent more impartial government, and red shades represent more partial governments. As you can see, the Nordic countries are the most impartial in Europe, together with some northern areas in Spain and Germany, while Greece and Italy and other European countries, regions in Europe, exhibit considerable levels of partiality. We also try to measure government impartiality at the country level, and for this we have a research device which is called a Quality of Government Expert Survey. We ask experts to evaluate impartiality of public administration, and the last survey, the last data available is from this data from 2014. We have data for 150 countries, and here you can see that the world represents a very uneven extent of impartiality of governments. So with this measure in hand, these measures in hand, we could study effects of government, of quality of government. So this is the first block I kind of gathered research into this first block, which deals with satisfaction of democracy, political participation, and trust in political institutions. So it's been found that higher QoG is linked with higher levels of these three outcomes. What is also interesting that the quality of government affects the preferences of people, of citizens, political preferences. For example, we know that people living in countries with higher level of government, they are likely to agree for higher taxes and also favor more redistributive policies. Similarly, or alternatively, contrary to this, the countries with the higher quality of government also exhibit less support for populist parties. This is a graph from Matthias Agiberri's article, where he convincingly showed that it is not only across all European regions higher levels of impartiality of government corresponds to low levels of support for populist parties. It's the same results. The results hold for individual regions in France, Italy, and Poland. Higher quality of government also has a positive effect on what I call the economic outcomes. For example, we found that higher QoG is linked with higher rates of entrepreneurship. It linked with higher rates of national productivity and innovation measured in different ways. And also that higher quality of government leads to a regulation that supports economic growth. For example, here you see a bivariate correlation between impartial public administration and ease of doing business. The World Bank's measure that measures the ease at which countries' regulations allow individuals who think about starting a business to start this business and to conduct this business. There is a very strong correlation, positive correlation between more impartial public administration and easier ways of less restrictions on doing business. So if we leaving aside the effects of QoG, if QoG is so consequential, so what? How do we get to it? No, I have to say here that straight away that the literature is less coherent, and first of all, it is also much smaller. We know that the longer history of universal indication leads to higher QoG. We know that the history and also the incidence of direct taxation leads to higher QoG, where people have stake in how the governments run through their monetary contribution to the state affairs. We tend to see higher quality of government. There is quite detailed literature on the positive association between merit-based recruitment to public bureaucracy and impartiality of public administration. However, the mechanisms which link meritocratic bureaucracy and impartiality are contested. So there is some work to do here. Finally, there is a growing area pointing that gender equality might be that magic bullet that drives higher quality of government. We know that having higher numbers of women in politics, in elected posts, leads to better outcomes and to higher quality, but the mechanisms through which this higher representation delivers higher quality of government remains contested. There are also women in public administration in the output side of politics. And here the results of the literature conflicting, the findings are conflicting, and there are not so many publications and research in this area. There is also discussion about what are the best strategies for reform. Should we go through gradually by step, eradicating and addressing individual institutions, or should we go a big bang approach, as Burestein labeled it, strategies that, for example, the 19th century Sweden went through, switching very quickly and within a very short time from a low QoG to high QoG. So in conclusion, I have to say that QoG is a powerful conceptualization of good institutions that enable a large and still growing research area. When it comes to the effects of QoG, we have a large and methodologically sophisticated literature that supports the argument that higher impartiality leads to better outcomes, for example, in terms of human well-being. However, when it comes to causes of quality of government, the literature is small and there is much less agreement between researchers on what leads to high QoG. And this leads us directly to the avenues for future research. I mean, first of all, we need, of course, more empirical research. And our own experiment with collecting data on European regions produced a large literature, a very interesting and diverse in methods, publications and research. And data from different regions, similar data from different regions of the world will be very welcomed. And the work that KIPA does, for example, in relation to the new southern countries studying the organization of public administration and the attitudes that public officials hold is a very promising contribution to this literature. We also want more diverse methodological approaches. Strangely enough, we are short on qualitative studies because we need qualitative studies to pinpoint mechanism. We kind of know, at least when it comes to the effects of QoG, that QoG works, but we don't know how exactly it happens. To gain clarity on mechanisms, we also need fine-grained data. And for this, we urged researchers to explore big data methods to gather data as internet scraping and using administrative data. We urged for improved methodology for expert-based data, and QoG itself, the newest survey, expert survey, uses this new methods, vignette assessments, vignette-based assessments of government impartiality. We can also work, and we do work with the we conduct experiments with public officials. For example, there is a research currently conducted on online experiments with public officials in Peru. So that was my presentation, and I would be very happy to answer your questions if we had met in person, but you're welcome to reach out to me or to my colleagues at QoG, and we hope for future and productive cooperation with KIPA and a community of researchers that KIPA's Public Administration Review will undoubtedly create. Thank you very much. Goodbye.